This is Christopher McNabb, who is facing charges for the murder of his 2-week-old child in Covington, Georgia. After the child's mother reported the baby missing to police, local law enforcement immediately launched a search. Later that night, McNabb is seen in front of TV cameras begging for his child back.
I want my kid back, man. That's my child, man. I want my kid, man.
The next day, the child's body was found in a nearby wooded area. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, which was later ruled a homicide. McNabb was arrested and charged with the murder of his own 2-week-old baby. After he was found guilty, we now move on to the sentencing. McNabb can then be heard claiming his innocence.
I'm innocent. I didn't do it. I've maintained that the whole time. I would never do this. That's all I got to say. I would never do it. I'm innocent.
And now the judge lets McNabb unknowingly choose his own sentence.
You claim you're innocent, so you tell me what sentence the man or woman that you claim did this should receive.
If you ever find out who did them, they deserve to be under the jail.
Okay, so they ought to get the maximum sentence.
Most definitely.
Okay. On the crime of malice murder, I sentence you to life in confinement without parole.
After McNabb was handed down the max sentence, he was moved to Hayes State Prison in Tryon, Georgia, where he is serving his life sentence. However evil is Christopher, the next case leads to Kaila Mendoza, who tweeted this the same night she took 2 girls' lives in a deadly drunk driving crush. This is Kaila Mendoza, who's facing charges for double manslaughter among other charges in Florida. The 20-year-old woman, who was not licensed to drive, was convicted of the murder of 2 women while drunk driving in Fort Lauderdale, Florida on November 17, 2013. Before the crash, Mendoza went to a local bar with her manager and colleagues from her job, where she drank 2 fishbowl margaritas. A few hours later, Mendoza got behind the wheel of a Hyundai Sonata and drove the wrong way on the Sawgrass Expressway.
Kaila hopped into her car and went speeding the wrong way down the freeway at more than 80 miles an hour. She collided head-on with another car, killing these 2 beautiful young women, Marissa Cotroneo and Caitlin Ferrante, both just 21.
Mendoza was charged with 2 counts of DUI manslaughter while impaired, 2 counts of DUI manslaughter with an unlawful blood alcohol level, 2 counts of vehicular homicide, and 2 counts of driving without a license causing death. Mendoza's then boyfriend owned the Hyundai Sonata involved in the crash and explained that the "too drunk to care" tweet was directed toward him.
"Too drunk to care" tweet was for my boyfriend because he was upset I was out hanging out with them and with Marcelo drinking, because he wanted me to be home.
The Ferrante and Cotroneo families filed lawsuits against Mendoza, her boyfriend, the T-Mobile store where Mendoza was employed, and the Tijuana taxi company. On May 4, 2015, 2 months after pleading guilty to 2 DUI manslaughter charges, Mendoza was sentenced to 24 years in prison. Mendoza was apologetic throughout the trial, and when she heard her sentence, her apology and crying intensified.
How much time passes, I'm gonna live with that in my heart every day.
After her sentence, Mendoza will also serve 6 years of probation and is permanently banned from driving a motor vehicle. Mendoza's apologies and remorse showed that she may yet be saved. However, other cases went viral because of rather unusual rulings, like the case of Susan Marie Mellen, a woman who spent a staggering 17 years in prison for a crime she didn't commit. She was allegedly involved in the beating to death of Richard Daley, a homeless man. At 42 years old, she was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. She's seen here in an interrogation, begging a detective to believe she's innocent and didn't commit the crimes she's accused of.
Anyway, are you sick, ill, or injured? Do you have any medical problems?
No, but I do.
Okay, I'm gonna book you. No, I'm not gonna believe. I'm talking homicide. A man was murdered. All right.
I didn't murder him.
Susan was found guilty based on the testimony of an informant who was later discovered to be a pathological liar.
I would never, from my heart and my soul, I would never let somebody do that to anybody. I didn't hate Rick. I would never let anybody do somebody I hated. I had feelings for the man. He was good to me. He was good to me. He was good to my kids.
During Susan's interrogation, she was persistent on the fact that she was innocent and could never be a murderer. However, Detective Wynn from the LAPD didn't believe her. In fact, she was so certain Susan murdered Rick that she arrested Susan for murder before her interrogation was even over. With no one else to listen to her, Susan turned to God and prayed she wasn't actually going to be arrested for a murder she did not commit. Fast forward 17 years, Susan is 59 years old, and now this is the moment that Mellen's case is finally overturned.
The petition is granted, the judgment is vacated, The conviction is overturned, and as to Miss Mellen, the case is dismissed.
Watch as she is instantly met with tears of joy and an outpouring of emotions as she hugged her grandchild for the first time. She said she had always believed the truth would come to light someday.
I even wrote freedom on the bottom of my tennis shoes with a black marker because I believed I was going to be free.
She never lost faith and maintained her conviction that she would walk free one day. Now that the day had arrived, she couldn't contain her happiness and even broke into a joyful dance as Susan embraced her family. She forgave those who wrongly imprisoned her, emphasizing the importance of forgiving even one's enemies. She eagerly anticipated sharing a McDonald's Happy Meal with her youngest daughter, reminiscent of the day they couldn't have one due to her arrest.
In prison, but freedom wasn't in me. I always felt like I was free in the inside. Well, I mean, I still kind of in shock. I don't know if it still hasn't hit me. I didn't want to be bitter. I didn't want to be a miserable lifer. I knew I was going to go home.
Is that your first cell phone?
Yeah, I never had one. I don't even know how to turn it on. I'm free! Ah!
The state of California awarded Mellen $597,000 in compensation, and reportedly, the Los Angeles City Council agreed to pay $12 million to Susan Mellen. However, Susan Mellen isn't the only person whose exoneration case went viral. There's the case of Daniel Villegas, who spent 18 years in prison for a double homicide he never committed. At the young age of 16, Daniel was convicted and has been behind bars since. On April 10, 1993, Armando Mondolazo, 17, and Bobby England, 18, along with two other individuals, were walking home from a house party when a car approached them slowly and sped away. Witnesses reported that the car turned around and came back toward the group, eventually stopping. Someone from the back seat opened fire, tragically killing Lazo and England. However, the story doesn't end there. You're probably wondering how Daniel became a suspect to the case in the first place. Well, as it turns out, there was actually no physical evidence linking Daniel to the crime. No DNA was found, no firearms retrieved, and no forensic evidence linking him to the case at all. He was convicted based on the testimony of a friend who claimed he confessed to the crime to him.
This was a reliable witness in 2014 who told the detectives, I asked him if he did it, and he said yes.
When 16-year-old Villegas was brought in for questioning, an El Paso detective threatened him with beatings and the death penalty unless he confessed to the murder. Under duress, the teenage Villegas signed a prepared confession from the detectives. He attempted to withdraw his confession a few hours later, but it was already too late. Villegas was charged with 2 counts of capital murder, with the false confession being the sole evidence against him. After spending 18 years behind bars, his verdict was eventually overturned, and Villegas was released on bond. He got married and started a family during this time. However, a third trial awaited him, which would determine his fate. Finally, the moment arrived, and Villegas stood in the courtroom uncertain if he would return home to his family or be sent back to prison for life. Watch as the judge delivers the news to Daniel that his 18-year-long nightmare was finally over.
In the District Court of El Paso County, Texas, 409th Judicial District, the State of Texas versus Daniel Villegas, number 94-0D09328. Verdict Form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of...
Daniel was incarcerated for a total of 23 years, 6 months, and 11 days. Daniel's case is guaranteed to bring out your emotional side. However, not all courtroom proceedings gain attention because of the feel-good factor. Next, we have a case that features 2 brutal teenage murderers. This is Antonio Barbeau, who with his best friend Nathan Paape, brutally murdered his grandmother in an attempted robbery in Sheboygan County, Wisconsin.
We got in, and then I looked to Nate, he nodded, and then I took the first swing.
Okay, and when you say that you took the first swing is with the hand axe?
Yes, sir.
The boys, who were both only 13 at the time, had intended to sneak up at his grandmother's and rob her. But upon showing up at the house, they were spotted and invited inside. She was attacked with a hatchet and a hammer, ultimately being struck at least 27 times until she died.
Started heading into the living room, falling.
And as she was falling, did you strike her again?
I hit one more time as she was falling.
At any point, did you not have the hand axe during this incident?
Right after that, Nate took it and he used it, the blade side of it.
You said that he took off the sweater. By that, do you mean the sweater that you had given him?
Yes.
Why did he do that?
I think because it was getting in the way.
Getting in the way of what?
Him swinging.
They then stole $155 in cash and some jewelry before stealing the car and ditching it at a local bowling alley, hoping to frame someone else for the crime. A few days later, both boys were arrested. Now, in court, Barbeau takes the stand to testify.
We were gonna try to scare her to get money and then use force if needed.
And when you say use force if needed, was there a discussion about what type of force you might use?
An attack, I guess to kill.
Barbeau pleaded no contest to first-degree intentional homicide as part of a plea deal, where he was sentenced to life in prison with eligibility for parole in 36 years. He would then be 50 years old, and in his final statement, his lawyer had to finish his thoughts.
I know I don't show my emotions much. I myself am not sure why, but that doesn't mean I don't.
I took away someone's mother, grandma, sister, friend, when I had no right to do so.
Paape was sentenced to life in prison as well, but with a chance of parole when he's 45 years old. This is Kimmberly Kessler, who is charged with the murder of her coworker in Nassau County, Florida.
Jordan Beard is Jolene Cummings' cousin.
Kessler was working at a Tangles hair salon under a fake name. She reportedly was on the run for 25 years and wanted in several states. She wouldn't be found until she brutally murdered her coworker with scissors and allegedly disposed of her body. This is Kessler after she was arrested and awaiting trial.
Are we on mute anyway, so I can say whatever the I want?
We're not on mute.
Oh, okay.
And this is what it was like to supervise her in jail.
She began to remove feces from styrofoam trays in the back of her cell and smear it on herself on the walls. She began to throw feces at Smith, Miller, and I.
Now, in the trial, she had to go to a separate room due to her outbursts.
I refuse them. I have refused them. I refuse the public defender's office. They appointed Jolene Cummings' cousin as my public defender. What, you don't want the public to know that?
And she continuously made false claims about her former public defender. She was later found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison without parole.